Steve, uh, I don't know. I just melted down here for an hour. Do you want to react to any of that, or you just want to talk football?
No, we can react to it. I think it's interesting that a lot of the clips you played was talking about the anticipation of black, the rise of black power in football, right? Because the last 50 years there haven't been enough good black football players. The influence of the black athlete has not been felt in the National Football League. And so you could say, all right, that's an agenda. But you could also say, well, that's a storyline that they want to push or an agenda. But I thought it was very symbolic that there was a lot of snow yesterday. It was like a snowfall. You know, the Eastern Front had this big freezing, frigid area. Flights were being canceled. So I would actually respect the likes of Ryan Clark, Cam Newton, and Stephen A. Smith. Now, you may disagree with this, that in the aftermath, they would say, ooh, it's not the brothers, it's the others. Our guys failed. Now you're actually covering that story three-dimensionally, 360 degrees, and you aren't just going with a certain racial dogma. You're actually covering a story fairly and accurately. So if they came out on Monday and said, man, our guys that we pumped up as a black power movement in football, it failed. Now I'd be like, you know what? You're actually being unbiased about this.
That would be an interesting conversation, uh, and they haven't because again, to ESPN, let's remove those three people, but and put the whole network in. They started out the season, man. There's going to be half the quarterbacks are black. It's the year of the black quarterback, and blah blah blah. And again, just we monitored all season like, well, the results are in. They went 90, 137, 137 and 2. Did I just get that right off the top? Yeah, 90, 137 and 2. None of this has been mentioned on ESPN. That like in the year of the black quarterback, uh, four white quarterbacks made it to the championship. I believe the black quarterbacks that made it to the playoffs, I think their combined record was 2-5. Yeah, once the results come in, and now it's like the whole, and this is, I kind of want to stay on this topic, but the whole Rooney Rule push that was supposed to fix the black head coaching situation. 10 openings, 6 jobs have been filled, none of them by black guys. The Rooney Rule, it's a failure. It's probably been in force for about 20 years. It's failed as well.
Yesterday was not only a referendum on the Rooney Rule, if you want to go that direction, I think it's also proof that old school principles in terms of leadership and coaching will never go out of style. Now, that doesn't mean being Vince Lombardi in 1965, but what was the word on Vrabel 2 years ago? Too abrasive, too tough. He's not enough of a player's coach. We don't know if he fits in today's culture. Well, they tried it one way with Gerard Mayo, and now they're in the Super Bowl. When I look at Seattle's coach, I don't look at a guy that's particularly friendly. I don't. I look at a guy that's very detailed, has a great level of intensity. He's about ball. Here's another interesting storyline. If you want to go with the black quarterbacks, Sam Darnold replaced the black quarterback. And look, and I think it's a little unfair because we've all had bad takes. Mina Kimes, I think, when this move was made, said this was a terrible move for Seattle. And I believe she's a Seattle Seahawks fan. There's no way they can upgrade. They did, vastly. And by the way, Geno Smith led probably the worst team, or probably the second worst behind the Jets, in all of football.
It Steve, as let's deal with Stephen A. Smith's gaffe on Friday, where he's crediting Terrell Williams with success that Terrell Williams wasn't there for. I think Stephen A's done a lot of things that I feel were embarrassing for ESPN. I don't know if you can get much more embarrassing than that because he also dragged Ryan Clark and Cam Newton into that, and they're sitting there nodding their head in agreement. Do you think it's crossed Jimmy Pitaro, Bob Iger's mind that, hey, maybe we made a mistake here with going all in with Stephen A. Smith?
Well, it may have crossed their mind, but I know you said about 20 minutes ago, Is Stephen A. Smith, or you insinuated, is he on thin ice? Is he in trouble? Jason, you ever seen that athlete that signs that 8-year, $300 million contract? He was a terrible cap hit, and his money is like 80% guaranteed. You ain't getting rid of him. You're stuck with him. He's your problem for as long as you have to. Take him.
I'm not. I'm not sure if that's the case anymore in terms of let's stay in football or even basketball. Ownership, they become so rich. The Steve Ballmers, the Matt Ishbias, the just ownership is just so flooded with money. I don't think they mind cutting huge checks anymore. And Disney, although it could cost someone their job if they had to cut bait with Stephen A. Smith, but I think they're willing to do that if something becomes Stephen A. Smith. I think is a lot from the solitaire to this to virtually to his
Oh,
politics. He's a liability.
well, look, he's become a bit of a caricature, but Jason, when it comes to the NFL, from what I know, I'm not a capologist. You're right. A multi-billionaire does not care about only 100 to 150 million, right? Here's what does it. But if you're the GM and there's a cap hit and it affects your ability with the roster, it's not like you could just. And I know that there's ramifications when you cut guys. So I don't know if it's just that easy. You're right. From an ownership perspective, looking down at the ivory tower, what's a couple of $100 million to a billionaire? You're right. But if you're the GM and your job's on the line, you're thinking to yourself, well, what about the rest of my team, though? So I don't know if it's that easy. But yeah, but look, I don't know how many people in America that really watch football go, you know what? I'm going to get some real solid analysis and a breakdown from Stephen A. Smith. What he is a good entertainer, a bit of a caricature. Sometimes you laugh with him, sometimes you laugh at him. That's what he is.
So I hear you describe him as an entertainer. Are you
Yeah.
entertained by him?
I don't watch it. I don't.
Then why do you call him an entertainer?
Well, because I don't look. This is a fact. And I know we're talking about a very low bar. If you look at the sphere of sports, and I get it, being on ESPN in that time slot, um, you are the 800-pound gorilla. You sit wherever you want, and you're the biggest guy in the room. Nobody's displacing you, right? Well, his numbers, again, and I'm putting this in the context, they're not great numbers, but he's in that cleanup spot. He's been anointed. We could talk about why he's anointed, how he's anointed, and all that other stuff. But when it comes to this particular avenue, he is still the biggest name, and more people probably watch him in sports than anybody else.
I think that used no, I don't think it used to be true. But I think that argument. I think Pat McAfee is disrupting that argument
Okay.
because I think when you just and I know YouTube is a different animal, but his YouTube success is so enormous, and I know the TV ratings haven't gotten there yet. And today still, pardon the interruption. I know it's just a 30-minute show, but it still does bigger numbers. I think that from it's like this racial bubble that these guys from Stephen A. and Ryan Clark and uh, Jamel Hill, they've all been living off that oxygen that they get off of being, we talk about race and we talk about race in a way that social media and Twitter respects and likes. I think that's all lessening, that it all has a lot less influence. And I say that partially, and I wish I had brought up the tweet, but Joe Thomas, the Hall of Fame offensive lineman,
Yeah.
he went directly at Cam Newton about that Kevin Stefanski video over Twitter. Joe Thomas, NFL Hall of Fame football player. I think he still work for the NFL Network or somebody, but he went directly at Cam Newton, and I keep going back to you know these ain't the same honkies, man. they just they're not taking it anymore, and I think you're seeing that across the board from people. people's reaction to what's going on in Minnesota, to the way they're reacting to the stupidity being spewed in sports, I think that the bubble that Stephen A. and Jamel Hill and these guys rode to relevance, I think it's burst.